What's good, y'all? It's your boy Jerry, back with another episode of Jerry's 2 cents, and I know it's been a minute since my last video. I think it's been like 2 years since I was talking about real estate and what the process has been like as a homeowner, but today we're gonna switch gears a little bit. I'm here to talk about designing and releasing my very first garment, the Toussaint Sweater, last April, and some of the biggest lessons I learned from that first drop, especially as I prepare to do a fall campaign and restock the sweaters to eventually re-release them. For those that are new here or just haven't heard from me in a while and forgot, my name is Jerry Toussaint. I'm a creative from Brooklyn, New York, and a Wall Street professional. And this channel is where I give my 2 cents on things that I'm passionate about, whether that be real estate, finance, fashion, anime, sports, just about anything I'm genuinely interested in. I'll talk about it at some point. For those of you that are subscribed to the channel that don't know me personally, you more than likely subscribe because of my most viewed video where I was talking about purchasing a multifamily property in Brooklyn. And while I'm very proud of that video and the success that it's done, honestly, that's just not what I want to be known for. I don't want to be known as the real estate guy. I don't even really want to be known as the fashion guy. You know, like I just want to be known as the guy who talks about various things that he's interested in, and you know, if you're rocking with it, if you're rocking with it, if you're not, you're not. So without further ado, let's talk about why I designed the sweater in the first place and the biggest lessons I learned from releasing the sweater back in April. If you haven't noticed, my last name is Toussaint and I am Haitian American. So I've always had a personal connection to Toussaint Louverture, but what really made me want to design the sweater is my love for history and art. I've seen other brands honor people like Malcolm X, MLK, and various other black activists, but no one has really highlighted Toussaint Louverture, the man who literally led the Haitian Revolution in a way that felt luxury. And I wanted to change that. When I started doing my research, I realized that no one really knows what Toussaint Louverture looks like. Most pictures you see of him are just interpretations, just like this sweater. But then I came across a painting of him made by an unknown French artist that really just captured the energy I was looking for, you know, powerful, regal, timeless. And it reminded me of one of those classic paintings that you might see of George Washington or Napoleon. You know, those paintings that kind of make you feel a sense of legacy. I knew right then and there that I wanted to portray Toussaint Louverture in the same light, so from there I just got to work. So I'm not a graphic designer by any means, so I did have some help creating this design. I didn't want to just, you know, take that painting and just plaster it on a shirt. I wanted to just kind of like take the inspiration from that, but then kind of do my own thing. So I linked up with my guy Edwin, who helped in terms of like creating the design, but then from there I kind of took over handling the manufacturing process, the logistics, and everything of the sort. But also I think something very important to note is that when I dropped these sweaters, I wasn't trying to start a brand. I still don't consider myself to have a brand. I just wanted to make a statement piece that introduced me as both a designer and a storyteller. And that's why everything from the neck tag to the poly mailer has my full name on it, because these sweaters aren't separate from me, they're an extension of who I am. Every detail of the sweater has purpose. The jacquard knit, the horse imagery, the rich tones, all of those are tied to legacy and motion. Because for me, fashion isn't just about what you wear, it's about the story you carry with it. And this sweater was my first story. So now let's get into the biggest lessons I've learned. First lesson is, do not wait until things are perfect to get started. Yes, I know you've probably heard that a million times, but it's so true. When I first started, I ran into all kinds of production issues. The GSM, basically how thick the fabric is, was way too light. The first sample I had made was at about 300 GSM and it wrinkled like crazy on the first wear. Even after you ironed or steamed it, still had a lot of wrinkle marks on it. I wanted something heavy, something that felt premium, so I asked my manufacturer if we could double the GSM and do 600 instead.
You know I had to double it.
And they told me that wasn't possible, so we landed at about 480 GSM. It still wasn't what I wanted, but I learned how technical jacquard knitting is. It's far different from screen printing. You can't just keep layering things on top of each other. Every small tweak affects the tension, the cost, everything. So learning that was very important in terms of arriving at that 480 GSM as opposed to just being like, nah, that, like, I'm just gonna find somebody that can do the 600 GSM. So instead of chasing perfect, I found a balance. What I did instead, because we couldn't go up to that 600 GSM, was instead ask the manufacturer if we could add a cotton lining within the sweater just to give it that extra structure but also warmth. So it wasn't perfect, but it was close. Then came the design issues. So Edwin's original illustration included about 11 colors, but the issue was that my manufacturer's knitting machine could only do about 6 colors, including the base colors. So really only about 5. Honestly, I almost scrapped the whole thing because I was really set on finding a manufacturer who could do all 11 colors, but as I looked around and tried to talk to them, a lot of those manufacturers who did have the capability to do all 11 colors wanted a minimum order of at least 500 sweaters, which was crazy for a first drop. So it just put me at a standstill. I wasted months chasing after that perfect manufacturer before I realized that I just needed to drop something. Like, it didn't have to be perfect, of course. This is my first ever garment and I wanted to make a good impression, but again, like, you just have to put something out there and then you can just figure out everything else over time. And honestly, that's the reason why the sweaters dropped in April as opposed to the fall. Obviously, the sweaters are more fall themed, but I wasted the last fall of 24 looking for the manufacturer. So it wasn't until about winter, early spring where I just went back to that first manufacturer and I was like, all right, let's get this done. And of course, dropping in the spring wasn't ideal, especially when you think about how close it is to summer. Some people aren't even really thinking about sweaters. But despite that, I would say that the first drop was still pretty successful. I ordered about 100 sweaters across all 3 colors and I sold a little over half and made profit. So I think that was pretty good. And not even just that, but now people know the sweater, right? So I already have people asking me, when is the sweater gonna drop again? You know, you have people who have already seen other people who have worn the sweater and now they have FOMO. They're saying, oh my God, I should have bought one. When can I buy one? So yeah, like, there's just no telling that hypothetically, if I were dropping the sweaters for the first time now with this fall campaign, that I would still have the same success that I did. The sweater got a really good reception when I dropped it, but again, like, things are just not always going to be perfect. You just have to get started and figure things out as you go. So the next lesson is finding the right people makes all the difference. None of this would have been able to happen without having the right people around me. For example, my manufacturer was a recommendation from my guy Devante, or Sticks, the same guy that I'd interviewed in my How to Start a Brand video. As a new designer, he walked me through a lot of different things that I just wasn't aware of at the time. He walked me through tech packs, fabric suggestions, and a bunch of other like small little details that you just don't really know as somebody who's just starting out. So yeah, I would definitely say try to surround yourself as much as you can with people who have done some level of design before, or at the very least, if you don't know anybody, ChatGPT. I think the biggest thing is you want to just make sure you're not going into it blindly, especially like when you're in the sampling phase, because samples cost money, right? And especially as somebody who's just starting to design, of course you want to get as many samples as you can made until you feel like you have a product that is good to put out to the masses. But at the same time, the last thing you want is to have a sample made that doesn't match the specifications that you put on the tech pack. At that point, that's just money just down the drain, right? So at the very least, you want to just make sure that you have dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's on the spec side, right? And then, you know, in terms of like the manufacturing side, making sure that you're doing what you can in order to reduce how much you'll have to pay ultimately when it comes to samples, right? It'll be about 2 rounds, 3, 4, but ideally you just want to do everything you can on your end so that you don't have to pay possibly thousands, hundreds of thousands just on samples. And I already spoke about Edwin and the wonderful job he did on the design. He was also a recommendation from another friend of mine that I went to school with. But again, that level of detail that he put into the sweater just allowed the process to be a lot more simpler, right? In terms of like not having to go back and like add anything just outside of color placement that I had told you. But from a design standpoint, everything was good to go the moment Edwin had sent it back to me, and I had Sticks helping me put that tech pack together. And I think overall, having those two helping me with this design definitely just allowed me to keep some of my sanity throughout all of the chaos that comes with doing something like this. So now the next lesson is storytelling matters. Naturally, when you're designing something centered around a figure like Toussaint Louverture, it's already implied that there's going to be some level of storytelling that's involved. But for me, it was about more than just that. It was about building a world around the sweater, essentially. From the start, my goal was never to necessarily sell anything, but I wanted to make people feel something. When you're a new designer, people don't know you yet. They don't owe you any attention, even if it's your friends. The only thing that's gonna make somebody stop scrolling on their phone and actually care and take your product seriously, as opposed to just treating it like merch, for example, comes down to the story. I wanted people to feel like they were a part of something bigger, something that had depth, pride, identity.
I want something big. I want something that says I'm here. Beyonce.
Because Toussaint Louverture isn't just a historical figure, he's a symbol of leadership, resilience, and freedom. And that's the same energy that I wanted people to wear when they put on the sweater. So everything you see as part of the creation and marketing of the sweater was absolutely intentional. From the illustration to the color palette to the fabric, I wanted it all to feel grounded, timeless, royal, without being too loud. And I think that's why people connected with the sweater so much. They weren't just seeing a product, right? They were seeing me in it, essentially. Like I said, I wanted this sweater to be an extension of me, and I think that I did so successfully, or at least I hope so.
I hope so. Okay.
But overall, I feel like people could tell that I wasn't trying to like chase clout or some type of trend. I think people could tell that I was genuinely trying to tell a story that just hasn't been told before. And that made me realize that if you can make people feel something, then you can make them believe in just about anything you can create afterwards. All that is to say is that storytelling builds trust, trust builds longevity, and the product just gives form to everything else. So now for the last lesson, pricing and accessibility. Each sweater across all three colors was about $140, not including taxes or shipping, and I felt like that was reasonably priced, but believe it or not, some people felt like that was too high.
I let it go for about $40. $40?
And I definitely understand that times is hard right now and not everybody can necessarily afford a sweater for that amount. But if you've ever made something from scratch in terms of designing, production, and packaging, you know that I didn't arrive at that number randomly. Each sweater cost about $28 to produce. Keep in mind my manufacturer is in China, and by the time you add things like shipping, packaging, and everything else, the price comes closer to about $50 a sweater. So charging the sweater at $140 wasn't a huge markup. It was more so about charging enough to cover the work while still keeping the sweater accessible for the most part. Mind you, that doesn't even include the price of getting samples made, photography, other marketing, and all the other little small things that just add up fast, especially like when you're just starting out. So all that is to say is that pricing is tricky. You price too low and some people might overlook your work. You price too high and you might alienate the people who actually want to support you. I wanted the Toussaint sweater to kind of land in that middle ground. Luxury without being too out of reach. Because to me, luxury is about accessibility. Could I have charged $200 a sweater? Absolutely. But I cared more about people actually having the sweater and having that proof of concept in their hands that I can produce a quality garment. So that when I eventually move on from these sweaters and decide to drop another collection, there's already gonna be a handful of people who already know that whatever it is that I drop, I'm gonna have them out here looking fly as hell. So yeah, you know, I think it's really just building that trust, especially as somebody new. Like, people might like you, right, as a person, right, but they don't necessarily know if they can trust you as a designer yet. So when you're dropping a first piece such as this, it's very important to make it accessible as possible so that you can give people that proof of concept and they can start building that trust in you. Yeah, so the first drop back in April taught me a lot in terms of how to move smarter and be more intentional. Last time I was so focused on production that I didn't really capture the energy of the sweater that it was meant for, which is the fall. So for this restock and for this fall campaign that I'm working on, I wanted to do a shoot that included all the things that you would expect from a fall campaign, including the warm tones, the different textures, the layering, all of those things. And for this time around, I also changed up the scenery in terms of where the pictures are being taken. In the first drop, the shoots were mainly taken in a studio, but for this shoot, I wanted to incorporate places that tell the story better, such as Little Haiti and Flatbush, Brooklyn, and a number of other places, mainly in Brooklyn. But yeah, overall with this restock, I just wanted to be way more intentional because I felt like I was rushing a lot of things back in April. So yeah, with this, I really just wanted to make sure that I was taking my time and also just documenting it all so that I can show you all the process. And yeah, if anybody else is kind of curious about what it is like to just kind of like start something from scratch, I hope that this has answered it, and any other questions you might have, I'll be happy to answer. But that being said, let's get into some quick behind the scenes footage from the fall campaign. It's nice, but it's thin, feel it. This is not no 800. You can't even wear this in the winter. Because it's getting returned. So that was the fall campaign. I hope you all liked it. The pictures and everything will be coming out about a week after this video drops on my social media handles. So yeah, that's the end of the video on the biggest lessons I learned from dropping my first clothing item. Obviously things aren't gonna be perfect as you'd imagine, but half the battle is really just getting started. So I hope this video was helpful to you all. Please feel free to leave any suggestions or questions in the comments. And yeah, I'll see y'all for the next video. Later.